Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to another edition of the Winning Drive. That's right. We're actually changing up the time for football season of the Winning Drive. We're going to be an hour earlier, basically bumping everything back to about 3:15 to about 4:30. So, folks, if you are a little surprised by everything, that's what's happening going forward. Thank you guys for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Of course, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, joined by the young prodigy, lifetime Longhorn TJ Vogel, and the coach, former high school coach at Vernon, Capel, Brownwood, Belden, Rotan. Also played college football at Abilene Christian. Coach there as well. Was on the staff at the University of Texas for multiple head coaches. It is Coach Bob Shipley. These days you can catch his work at shipleyranches.com. What's going on, Coach? How you doing?
Hey, doing great, man. We got a little duck camp going on here. Look at that.
Hey, there you go.
One of our proud sponsors of On Texas Football.
Hey, look at that. Coach representing. I'm representing too. Shout out to Duck Camp. Shout out to you guys for joining us. Really appreciate it. Very special show planned for you. And it's going to be a Monday. This is going to be something that happens every Monday, all right? So it's going to become one of our Monday favorites. We're going to be joined by my man Stevie Lee, lifetime Longhorn Stevie Lee, my former teammate, former D tackle at the University of Texas from 01 to 04. He's going to join us on the show, courtesy of our good friends at Hargrove Roofing. That's going to be every Monday. So usually we'll be recapping some games, but we'll ask him about D tackle. It's actually one of the more high-profile positions on the 40 acres right now, considering all the guys Texas brought in, the guys they lost, Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. So we'll ask one of the guys who was down there in the trenches, my man Stevie Lee, is going to join us coming up around 3:30. All right, that's going to be a Monday tradition for you. But in the meantime, we got practice to talk about. I mean, CJ Vogel got out there to the media window, so we'll get CJ's thoughts about practice. We'll get over and talk about and hear actually from, and we'll get to see from head coach Steve Sarkisian's media availability after practice. So we got some cuts that we'll play there. And of course, we'll answer as many of your questions and address as many of your comments, concerns as we can throughout the show. So please throw them out there. You know how it works. Super chats, jump to the front of the line. They can interrupt the show at any time. Really appreciate you guys joining us. Excited because it is football season. That's why my blood is already pumping. I'm already excited. I'm sure CJ is too. All right, CJ, I want to start off kind of getting your thoughts before we get in some of the Sark sound here. And we have the coaches poll to get to as well. That was announced today, gentlemen, the coaches poll. So I want to get you guys' thoughts about that. But let's start off with CJ's thoughts. You got a chance to get out there to practice, get it in the media window, get a chance to see the guys. Just give me your initial thoughts about get out there to see the guys. They didn't have full pads on. That's going to happen tomorrow. But what were your thoughts of the team that you saw?
Yeah, it was my first time getting to see them since fall camp began. But, Rod, we talked about it all offseason, right? You're expecting a lot of depth on offense. You're expecting a lot of depth on defense. Yeah, that was the big takeaway today. I thought that there was a lot of depth and a lot of talent at each position on both sides of the field. Bobby Burton and I talked about this earlier today, kind of recapping in an early morning live stream, just what was kind of my big takeaway. It was, I thought at each position you could look at a number of first, second, or third team guys and look at them as true contributors at some point this year, right? Edge is expected to be a big position. Well, I saw edge rushers number 5 and 6 contain Colton Vosick and Colin Simmons. Tell me the last time the edge room has had some talent like that here at Texas. And I'll tell you, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, to be completely honest. So whether it be wide receiver, whether it be defensive line, there's a lot of able bodies right now. It's all about finding that right mix moving forward. But I really like what I saw today, just in terms of size, talent, and pure numbers. I thought this was one of the more complete looking teams from a roster perspective that I've seen so far at Texas since covering the team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree. And Sark has reiterated that several times, his deepest and most talented team that he's had on the 40 acres, and that's saying a lot. Let's start. You started talking about the edges there. I think we should start right there because Trey Moore has been a huge topic of conversation among Longhorn fans. The depth at the edge position for Texas this year is something, as you pointed out, we haven't seen in a really, really long time. Sark was asked specifically about Trey Moore on the edge and what has been his impression of Trey Moore early on. And Sark has also talked about the pass rush. He remarked in the media availability that the pass rush has been good. He has liked the pass rush so far. That has actually made it tougher for Quinn to consistently be able to step up in the pocket. So that's a good sign. But my man Matthew has this piece of audio here of Steve Sarkisian when asked about Trey Moore and his impact so far in the first few practices of training camp.
One, he's very twitchy. You know, Trey's not the biggest guy. He's not small, but he's not the biggest guy. But he's very twitchy. He has a unique ability to bend when he comes around the corner and get underneath tackles. He's a very natural athlete, so he can up and under and double move guys. But I also think he works at his craft, and so he's not going to give you the same thing. He's going to set things up, you know, as even as practice goes on, and it's a great challenge for him. You know, I mean, he's going against two good tackles in Kelvin and Cam, and you know, I think the sign of a good team is when you've got good players and not either side is dominating the other. And Trey's winning on some rushes, and that's a good thing, and that's pushing those two guys at tackle as well.
All right, there you go. Start talking about how twitchy Trey Moore is, coach. And it looks like to me that Trey Moore getting some, I've heard some first team reps as well at the edge position because he's that much of it. They expect him to be that much of an impact player. What are your thoughts about Trey Moore? Looks like early on he's turning some heads. Doug says Trey Moore equals Dwight Freeney. If that's the case, then I'll take a low budget Dwight Freeney. I'll take a Dwight Freeney light, and I think he'd still be pretty damn good. What are your thoughts, coach?
I think he is freaky. I think he's freaky Freeney. I don't know if he's Freeney freaky, but he's definitely a guy that we've been looking for, that edge player for a long time. I mean, a guy that's a difference maker, that they have to know where he is. And, you know, it's going to be interesting to see. You know, week in and week out, of course, he's going to be playing against better competition, you know, than he's had been playing against. It'll be interesting to see, but it sounds like he's made the adjustment very well in terms of, you know, we got some pretty good cats up there trying to block him, and so he just brings that. I love an edge guy that's twitchy. When he said that, that's what I need to hear. And let me tell you, that's what offensive tackles hate to hear. They hate a twitchy guy because there's not many offensive tackles that could be twitchy.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. CJ, what are you? And they said he was getting some first team reps at the buck end. Actually, was the reports coming out of practice as well. What are your thoughts on, you know, Trey Moore? Is he going to end up basically starting for Texas at the edge position? Other guys rotating off of him?
Yeah, I think so. And he was in that first group unit today with Barron Sorrell being the opposite of him. So that, Coach, I like what you said there, right? You know, if you're an offensive tackle who's more so in that retreat stance, you know, moving backward in pass protection, twitchiness is one of those things that is very hard to combat when you're moving backwards. And that's something that I think is standing out very early with Colin Simmons as well. So when you have kind of that, you know, that package that we've talked about, that NASCAR package, Rod, and you're able to throw guys like Moore or Simmons on the field as often as Texas will be able to do this year, well, that's going to give some fits to opposing tackles and certainly start changing the way in which opposing offenses go about the Texas front. You're going to have tight ends chip in a little bit longer. You're going to have running backs needing to stay inside the pocket to help contain some of these guys coming after the passer. So I really look at what we heard today from Sarkisian as, that's exactly what you want to be hearing about when it comes to Trey Moore. Twitchiness and ball get off. Two very important aspects of getting after the quarterback. And again, you see him in person. Rod, you got to see him a little bit last week. He doesn't look like a guy that has 22 sacks over the last 2 years. I mean, he looks like a common guy, a guy that you would see at UTSA, not one that Texas is pointing at saying that's going to be a special ball player for us this year, because he just doesn't have those long measurables that, you know, are so valuable when it comes to NFL quality edge rushers. But he's got that quickness and that twitchiness, and that's where he's really starting to make some hay right now early on in fall camp.
Yeah. And, you know, I think also with him, what I love about, he's a student of the game. He talks about how he used his speed rush. That's his moneymaker, right? That's his kind of elite move that he has as a pass rusher with that ball get off you talk about there, CJ. But he's talked about now this counter is his spin move. That if you do catch up to the speed rush, coach, if you're quick enough to be able to cut him off on the speed rush, then it automatically makes you vulnerable to the spin move. He said there's no way for you to stop his speed rush and not be somewhat vulnerable to the spin move. And he said he can spin inside and outside. Goes to what Sark said about him being a student of the game. So that's why I think he's a savvy pass rusher. He's a natural pass rusher, but also a savvy. You can tell he's been a student of the game as a pass rusher too, trying to learn more moves and acquire more moves as a pass rusher.
No doubt.
Yep, that's what I love about him. All right, I know you guys got some questions here. I love what Jedi Master Bevo says. Trey Moore will lead the SEC in sacks. He can play different spots. And yeah, I think maybe they like him at the buck end because they can stand him up and then maybe run some twists and stunts in some games with him on, with some of the tackles or maybe with some other linebackers that you can still move him around and run some games because maybe that's what they're going to do with him, get him matched up on some much less athletic offensive linemen.
Yeah,
right.
Rob, there's an interesting comment Anthony Hill made in the spring when talking about Trey Moore because, as a linebacker, you see the four guys up in front of you and what they do largely impacts what your role becomes on a given play, right? He said one thing that really stuck out to me and still stands with me now is Trey Moore, when he drops back into coverage, I mean, he doesn't look out of place. I'm sitting there thinking, hold on, what? Trey Moore dropping back into coverage, but if you look back a little bit a year ago, it was Ethan Burke who they asked every so often to drop back into a zone flat, responsibility in a zone look. If that's something that, is going to be a part of this, defensive scheme again, Trey Moore in that quickness and twitchiness is going to help him play in space as well. So really superb athlete. We've seen it so far in fall camp. We saw it in the spring as well. But the different ways in which they'll utilize him to open up maybe a blitzing David Benda, maybe a blitzing nickelback or cornerback, which we've seen PK utilize as well during his time here in Austin. That'll be really interesting to see what kind of compounds with him on the field. Maybe not so much just getting straight after the quarterback, but in different kind of variations of how they use him to be a focal point of this defense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, CJ. That's a great, and I remember that. And I remember thinking to myself, Will Muschamp used to always have a great saying. He said, thoroughbreds shouldn't go backwards. So he'd always be like, nah, if I got a thoroughbred, if I got a Brian Arakpo or Sergio Kendall, now, man, they're coming right at you, downhill all the time. Thoroughbreds don't go backwards. But I remember he saying that and thinking to myself, okay, so maybe Trey Moore is not just going to be a situational designated pass rusher for them. And if he's going to start, then you would think, on early downs, he's got to do more. He's got to be a run stuffer, but also potentially a guy that can drop back into coverage. So I like what you said there. All right, let's get to a couple of questions. We got some more Sark audio that we'll get to. I promise you that. We'll also talk about that coaches poll. But how about this one from James? He says, Colton Vosick looked great in spring. How does he look now? You just talk, CJ. You got a look on him. I mean, he looks good. They're just deep at the edge position.
Yeah, that's the thing. Again, he finished the spring very strong. I think multiple sacks, multiple tackles for loss in that spring game. The coaching staff really saw a flip between weeks 2 and 3 in spring ball, and that's carried on into the summer. Vosick looks like he's carrying about 255 pounds. I believe he's listed at that on the roster right now. At 6'5", you love that kind of prototypical build off the edge. He's also a twitchy kind of elite athlete at that size, at that position as well. He's doing well. Again, I've only seen the one practice, so I can't speak on too much. We only saw about a period and a half of team install on the defensive side of the ball before they moved to special teams today. So I'll continue to look out for Vosick moving forward into future availabilities. But I'll tell you again, I mean, I thought he was a standout at the end of spring, and they're very excited that he's kind of found that groove going into fall camp.
Doug Haywood says, and I'll ask Coach about this. Do you consider the defensive ends as co-starters now with Burke and Sorrell, and now you got Trey Moore you're throwing in there too? You think it basically those guys could, depending on the matchup, be just co-starters for you? You ever had that situation, Coach, where you got more starters than you do positions to fill?
Yeah, and you just the same way that they've been doing it. The SID's been doing it forever. You put a slash between their names, and because you don't know for sure who's going to start, and it depends on the opponent, what their strength is, what the health of your guys are, and just to keep morale up by, a guy that, that comes in from, say, UTSA with 22 sacks. You don't want him to get his dauber down, as I say. So you just say or slash or whatever, and that's a great problem to have, talking about can we call them all starters.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it should be matchup based. I think weekly there'll be some guys where you think a skill set may match up better, or this is a team that has a certain style of play or brand of football they play, and maybe there's a better week for an Ethan Burke or as opposed to a Trey Moore, but they end up almost playing the same amount of reps, or essentially the same, or at least you divide them up the same each game, but maybe start different guys depending on how teams want to attack you and how they want to exploit you. It's like you say, Coach, it's a first world problem. What did Sark call it? He's crying on a yacht. Is that what it is? That's a lot of crying on the yacht these days for Longhorn fans. Ain't nothing wrong with that at all either. AJJ says, I know Sorrell is the leader of the defense, but should he start over Ethan Burke? I thought Burke outperformed Sorrell last season, in my opinion. That is it. I think this is why we are talking about the coach. Why coach talking about the co-starters, because you genuinely have. Those. I think you do have three guys that probably are starting caliber defensive ends for you: Burke, Sorrell, and even PK says Sorrell is the leader on that edge room. Yeah, so that matters in this on this team. But we know also you can lead not being a frontline starter at Texas. Jay Witt, Rojo. That doesn't necessarily make you he's got to lead. Back in my day, it seemed like you had to be a leader, you had to lead by example, and also be the best player, one of the better players. I like Sark's culture where you don't necessarily have to have that. A lot of guys can step up and lead. I think you got three starters, and I don't know how many will get those starts, but I think that's the case. But what do you think, guys' thoughts? Ethan Burke, if you are going to choose two starters, should Ethan Burke get started over Barron Sorrell?
It's interesting, right? What kind of roles do you want to see opposite of Trey Moore? What kind of packages fit the personnel of your opponents at the given week? I don't know. There were times in which I thought Sorrell flashed last year. There were times in which Burke flashed last year. What you want to see is that consistent piece opposite of what to be a guy that can get after the quarterback, as well as anyone Texas has had on their roster in quite some time. It's been a few years since they've had that bona fide edge rusher that teams have to game plan for. And if they can find a level of consistency better than what we saw in 2023 opposite of Trey Moore, that's great. Which of those guys takes that next leap? I don't know. It's too hard for me to handicap at the moment right now.
All right. Let's not waste any more time because we're joined by a very special guest, courtesy of our good friends over at Hargrove Roofing, now another great partner joining the On Texas football family. This segment of the Winning Drive sponsored by our friends at Hargrove Roofing. And now you need to know who's on your roof. Courtesy of our good friends at Hargrove Roofing. Check them out, 512-645-3202. Lifetime Longhorn Stevie Lee is joining us right now. Sorry about the wait, Stevie Lee. I apologize.
All good.
Great to have you on. You're going to be coming on every Monday, of course. So we appreciate you. First of all, how you doing? How's that beautiful family you got there? How's that beautiful family?
Everything is going well, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. Hargrove Roofing introduced me to you guys, and it was like, you got to get on with these guys. I partner with Hargrove in their marketing. And so, man, they've been great with people across Central Texas, across Dallas, across Houston, and from my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana. So Hargrove Roofing, know who's on your roof.
Hey, Stevie.
Yeah.
Bob Shipley, what's up, man?
How you doing, man?
You get on top of those roofs. You just mark it. You don't get on them, right?
Hey, man, this is what I do right here. If you see me on your roof, there's a problem.
No,
man. I would not want to be on a roof no matter what size I was today.
Nah, man, I try to get up on my roof to do some Christmas lights. I called my man over at Hargrove. I was like, hey, man, can you send some people out? I ain't getting up on this roof again, man.
Yeah, you're too old for that, Steve. You're too old for that, man. No doubt. Well,
sure.
folks, before we get into it, let the folks know what you are actually doing these days, because you got your hands in a lot of different things. But let the folks know what you're engaged in these days.
Well, my number one job has always been real estate right out of football. I got done playing football at the University of Texas back in January 05, that Michigan Rose Bowl. And I got back to Austin, and I've been selling real estate ever since. So I'm Stevie Lee Properties. I'm with Compass Real Estate. And my company name is Access Austin. So I sell real estate, residential. I love doing it. It's a continually learning situation for me. I love educating my buyers and sellers. So that's what I do, man. I love doing that. But the main thing is I'm just a dad, man. I'm just an old dad here in the Austin area. The genesis of my relationship started with Rod Babers, y'all.
Come on now. I didn't want to bring it up. I was going to let you bring it up. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to brag.
Man.
I'm not gonna brag. Yeah.
I have this cheesy All-American story. The football player married the cheerleader, the Texas cheerleader, and I love my wife. Great human being. But it started with Rod Babers matching us up, man, introducing us, and Ken Solving.
That's right.
During the school year, Ken Solving was an all-girls dorm.
Yep.
But if you stayed in Austin for summer workouts, they put the football team in an all-girls dorm. Put us in an all-girls dorm, fella. I don't think this is going to work in these days, I don't think they'll let that happen these days. So, but I found my wife in that all-girls dorm. What we are, 24 years later, she's my wife. I got a 17-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old daughter. They're just going through their volleyball tryouts right now, man. So I appreciate you, Rod, for introducing me to the love of my life. You still owe me a song we're going to renew our vows at some point.
Hey, I'm in.
Sing some Luther Vandross or something, bro.
Hey, no, listen. She asked me, did I know it? When I walked over there, it's her and a group of friends. She said, "Do you know any nice guys?" And I was like, "Damn, I gotta be real with you. That ain't me right now. I do know a nice guy. I know a nice guy." And then boom, there you go. So essentially, I brag about it to this day. That's one of my claims to fame is that I am the reason for that beautiful.
I will back you up on that story any day, man. So I appreciate you. Hey, but she realized she realized real quickly I wasn't that much of a nice guy though. You know what I'm saying? She said she wanted a nice guy, but nah.
He was among us. I will vouch. Stevie Lee was the best of us when it comes to character. He was a great guy. He's mature before the rest of us got mature. It took me a long time to get to where Stevie Lee is right now.
Hey, Stevie, I want to ask you something. We're friends on Facebook. You're from Shreveport. Were you a country boy?
So my wife.
The reason I'm asking, I saw your mama's 60th birthday, and I remember she got to take her with a beautiful horse, and I thought. Yeah. Oh, Stevie, was Stevie a country boy?
No,
and tell us about your recruiting as you finish that up, leading to your recruitment from the University of Texas.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So Rod knows this. Rod's family knows my family.
Yep.
So yeah. So my parents are country, but they moved to Shreveport to raise me and my brother and my sister. So I am kind of an urban cowboy. I can do all that stuff. If you ask me, do I want to do all that stuff? Absolutely not. I can ride a horse and I can do all the feed and all that stuff. I can do all that, and I've done it with my grandparents back in the summers when I was younger. But no, that's not me anymore, man. I'm concrete jungle. I love it. I love high rises, walking out my front door and walking. I'm urban living. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's crazy because you still got people in Shreveport, right?
Absolutely, Shreveport, Coshada, Natchitoches. Louisiana, all that.
Yeah, my people, my mama does her grocery shopping in Shreveport.
Yep.
Like my mom and my mama and daddy know his people not only from the games. When it comes to the games, they get to hang out, but then after that, they realize, oh man, we got people from the same area. So my family, we swamp people. It's a little mix of country and Cajun. Swamp people. That's basically what we are. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a mixture. You're right. It's a mixture of the soul food and Cajun food, and we right there together, man.
Yeah. So who recruited you from Texas?
From Texas, it was Daryl Drake. Daryl Drake had our area. Yeah. Daryl Drake had the area, but Coach Mike Tollison had me as a D lineman, right? He put the full court press on me. And what's funny is Mike Tollison was at LSU when I was in my younger years of high school. So he was actually recruiting me to go to LSU. And then Coach Brown hired Bull Reese and Coach Tolley from LSU. And so it was the UT boy said Evangel. I see that, man. I am an Evangel boy. And so he had the same recruiting techniques, just plug and play. So he was at LSU and plug and played right here at the University of Texas. It worked, I guess.
Yeah, it did. No doubt. Yeah. Well, Stevie, I want to ask you about some ball, man, because the D tackle position, interior D line position, has been a huge topic of conversation ever since last year. Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. And first of all, I'll kind of get your thoughts on how dominant those guys were as a duo, and then tell me who you think is going to step up out of this D tackle room this year and really try to supplement and really try to fill in for that void they're going to have there inevitably.
So that's a $1 million question, and if I knew the answer to that, I would own half of Austin. But so Rod, I don't know if you remember, but me and Marcus Tubbs was put in this same exact situation, right? Mm-hmm. Because back then, if y'all remember, Sean Rogers and Casey Hampton, 2 first-rounders, left a big old hole right there in the interior of that defense. And but we still had, I heard you guys talking about the edge rusher. So we had Corey Redding still. Mm-hmm. And then we had on the other end, we had kind of
rushers by committee. And Kelly Thornton was down there. Yeah,
exactly. So as I was in the spring looking at practice in the spring, we got some. We then I knew we had some work to do because it's hard to replace 2 first-rounders like that. I mean, those guys were phenomenal at the defensive tackles position. So I'm about to go back out to practice. I want to go and see how it's going because I got a lot of trust in Torrey Becton. Torrey get these guys right, and he specializes a workout just for them. When I was at the University of Texas, the D line had one blanketed workout, and we all did the same thing. Mm-hmm. These guys, whatever they need is what their body is worked on, like a true lab. So I think that for starting out, there might be defensive tackles by committee, but you always see cream rise to the top, right? So not to say anything bad about the guys that are, that'll be the second guys, but you'll see the work that's going to rise. I mean, and then, when the first game come around, that might not be the guys by mid-season, And I love that about Coach PK because he can put and you guys talked about depending on the matchup who might be in there. And then I haven't seen any of the new freshmen or the new transfers that come in yet, but I'm thinking it's going to be D tackle by committee first, and then we'll get some guys where the cream just rises naturally.
Yeah, Steve, I want to
answer a little bit of your question.
No, a little bit, no doubt.
Yeah,
I thought that was a great answer there. First, tying it back to you, obviously, kind of taking the reins there from 2 guys that went early in the draft. How I know it's a little bit different of the social media era now, and obviously we got the 4 of us up here blabbering about football. I mean, that gets back to the locker room at some lengths, right? Maybe not to the point where they're tuned in every day, right? But they see that the social media headlines, they see maybe some of the concerns or question marks about this team. And when it is that position group of, the defensive line currently, did you hear about it in the offseason leading up to when you were taking over? I mean, how often was that conversation brought up in the offseason of, oh, what are we going to do at this position now that, 2 of our big playmakers from a year ago are headed off? Is that a big talking point that gets back at all, or
no?
Is it a little bit magnified now because of social media?
It may be more because of social media now, but it got back to us for sure. There was a level of pressure back then. For me though, as a true freshman, when I came in, Marcus was already here, so he was a red shirt and then and a red shirt freshman. And so when I was a true freshman, I played whenever Casey Hampton came out. I went in for him, and but then the second or the third game against Stanford, I break my foot. So I broke my foot, my fifth metatarsal, and I had to take a red shirt. And so I had that whole season and then off season to try to get back right. But you hear it. You hear the buzz throughout the city. We lost 2 great defensive tackles, and we don't know if Stevie Lee is going to be back in time or will he be 100% when he does come back. And then but Marcus Tubbs was still there. So he was tried and true through the whole season my freshman year. And obviously did well and went on to play with the Seattle Seahawks. But then for me, I break my foot again that spring. So I was going through 2 breaks before I even could get back on the field for that next fall. So we would rotate people in on the left side, the 3 technique, if you will. And so but you hear the buzz in the city is like, where's it coming from? And then you kind of internalize that. But I'm sure it's a whole nother game with social media because those guys, everything is coming through your phone nowadays. And I kind of feel sorry for the guys for that. And they actually need to have some time off and take time off of social media. I'm hoping they're teaching these guys to do that. But it is more in your face right now because it's in my face and I don't even play no more.
Hey, Stevie, let me ask you about PGZ, man. What's Philip Geiger done? Because both of you guys, y'all came in the same class, right?
Came in same class, same thing, everything together. Me and Philip been kicking it since freshman year of high school. The summer going into our freshman year of high school, we've been knowing each other ever since then. So this is golly, man, I hate to say it out loud, over a 30-year friendship relationship. That's my brother, man. That's my brother. But he's doing well. Philip lost his sister earlier this year, and it was a tough one for us. She just had an illness, and but that's my brother. Like, I do anything for him, he do anything for me. He lives right up here in Georgetown. Now the crazy thing about Philip is he got a little Philip Jr. His name is Coyote.
I've seen him on social media. Yeah.
He loves going over the top of kids. He's only 10. He's about to be 11 this summer. He goes up on top of people and high points the ball like those Shipley boys. Oh. He's been watching film, man. So I got girls and I love watching my girls play volleyball, but I love going out to watch Coyote play football, man. And this is his first year playing tackle football. Philip and his wife has really managed his career to where they didn't want to do the whole tackle football early on, Yeah. So this is his first year. I told him to be very careful with it, and Philip's out there coaching him, teaching him how to tackle. And Philip was reckless back in the day. That boy would come downhill and hit you, man.
Yeah, he would, man. I remember P. Jeezy. That's how he got the nickname, P. Jeezy, man. I'm glad that P. Jeezy's doing well. And I'm sorry to hear about his sister, obviously. But I'm glad that him and his family do. He's got a beautiful family too. All right, we don't keep it too much longer. I got a couple of other questions for you. One, this is away football about Louisiana. When you got recruited out of Louisiana, and Louisiana, by the way, has always been has been one of the most fertile recruiting grounds in the country in terms of producing NFL talent. But now it seems like it used to be a secret, and now it's not a secret in the last 10 years or so. But it feels like now that it used to be like LSU, and it was rare to get a Texas to come to Louisiana and get a guy from the University of Texas. You feel like now that that's more of a pipeline and what happened that in terms of that evolution, where now it seems like everybody recruits the state of Louisiana. It used to be like LSU had a lockdown on the state. I remember getting you was big. I remember Max like, no, getting somebody out of Louisiana, getting some of the best players out of Louisiana, that was almost impossible to do and tough to do. Now it seems like they're having more success. getting some of those guys out of Louisiana. You notice anything happening? I mean, you still got ties there. Even Shreveport is producing some good players nowadays.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to the reason why I came to one of the reasons why I came to the University of Texas. One, Cole Pittman was here.
That's
Cole
right.
Pittman came down a year before, and we played in
Mm-hmm.
high school together. He ended up passing away in the car accident. You guys remember?
Yep.
But I came over here. Mark Pittman, his dad would just throw us in his car, and we would come down to a spring practice or something like that. But one of the things that I really liked about Austin was I was at the practice fields, and then right down the road, I saw downtown. And I told y'all I was a concrete cowboy. I love urban living. And so I was like, if I'm going to practice right here and I can go right over there and hang out, this is where I want to be. That's one. Two, I grew up in Louisiana. I love Louisiana. I love the state of mind. I love that state of mind and its state of mind, right? And so, but they had Jerry DiNardo. They weren't every game I went to on a recruiting visit to LSU, they lost. And they right? And I came from a program to where I never lost a high school football game, right? I was 60-0 in high school. And then to go to college and be like, this ain't it. And then they had that number one recruiting class. I think you were in that recruiting class, right, Rod?
Yeah.
The number one recruiting class. They had the number one high school football player. They had the number one defensive football player in Chris Sims and in Corey Redding. And I was like, who doesn't want to be a part of that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's why I came to the University of Texas. Now, Louisiana football was great, really good when the private schools and the public schools played each other. That's my era. We all played each other. So there's Haynesville's Neville and John Curtis and Evangel and all those schools were private and public I just named, and we all played each other. There was no separation in Louisiana. So everybody rose up to the top, right? And then they kind of broke it off and tried to make it separate like they do it here in Texas. And I think that the caliber and talent kind of fell down a little bit there. It's coming back now, like you said, Rod. Like we're starting to get some good players come out of Louisiana again. But back then, when we were coming out, you had Ryan Clark and Swagoo and those guys all out of LSU and even Ed Reed. He played in Miami, but he's from Louisiana as well. So those were the dogs back there because we all played and brought the whole high school football up together. But then the Louisiana High School Association kind of broke it up a little bit, and I think that was a mistake. I really do. Yeah.
Stevie, I got a question for you. Your senior year was the beginning of a pretty incredible run, or actually it was probably I'd say so. I mean, that win against Michigan in the Rose Bowl was amazing. Do you see some similarities in the atmosphere that Mac was able to create on the team and in comparison to what Sark has done? Because Sark does a great job of getting the right players in and letting them lead the team and hold each other accountable. Can you relate to that?
I can. I actually tell this story all the time, man. So thanks for the question. I used to go to practice before Sark was here, and practice was kind of dead to me.
Yeah, I know. I would.
You were there. Yeah, you were there.
Yeah. I hear you.
So it was just kind of dead. But when I was there, my senior year, me, Jay Hills, yeah, Jay Hills, and Jonathan Scott, we were fighting in practice. Like we were having fist fights almost in practice. We were fighting, and then after I left, things kind of went sideways at the University of Texas. I'm not saying anything new. It was just dead in practice. There was no competition in practice, right? So I go back, going back to when Sark first got here, it was still a little dead, but I had went on, early on. It was still a little dead. But this time last year before camp, I went to practice last year around this time, and it was live. I was like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. There's some competition against each other. There's some butting heads. in practice, and that's what you want. We know we're brothers. We know when the last horn sounds, we're gonna get back on the bus, or we're gonna walk over and we're gonna be cool again. But in between the horns, we fighting. I got a position and I need to get on the field. You got a position you need to get on the field. I'm not gonna take it easy on you, and you shouldn't take it easy on me, because my toughest competition should be right here in practice. And so I saw that last year. And what happened last year? We came top 4 in the country. We made the playoffs. When I went out to spring ball, it was still competition. I haven't gone out to this camp yet, but I'm hoping and I'm expecting to see competition within practice. So that's the formula right there. That's what happened when we were there and we were good, and we went on to win a national championship, from my lips to God's ears. So maybe we can do the same thing this year, but it's the progression of how you prepare, and it was pretty evident last year.
I love that observation, Stevie. That's a great play. Unless you got something else, CJ. Unless you got something else, we'll end it there, because that's a really good place to leave it.
No, I love that. Just the competition of practice in which you see the guys, how much it means to you. Because when I first started covering Texas is 2018, late 2018, 2019. So it was, those Tom Herman years when, you have the expectations before the season to come in and be a team that competes for the Big 12 title. And you go to practice. And just as you mentioned, it just wasn't what you would expect, I think, when you hear the stories of those great Texas teams. And even beyond that, right? Growing up, you hear about the great Miami teams, you hear about the USC teams, and then you start watching the documentaries and they peel behind the curtain a little bit, and it's, we were fighting each other in practice every day, and you walk out thinking it's going to be very similar to that. And so I'm not saying or advocating for them to bring out an octagon or whatever and have these guys go full UFC.
I am. Bring it out. Yes.
But I like that level of competition. It emotions rise. And so that's the kind of passion I love to hear about. And again, to your point, we see that a little bit more now. So it's very encouraging in the sense that it's taken the same direction now than what it was back then, when obviously the national championship game or season was expectation again.
Hey, it's Stevie Lee. We didn't have an octagon, but we did have the storm.
We had the storm.
We had the storm, man.
Stories.
We needed to settle stuff in
the storm, baby.
If it ever went too, it got too hype on the practice field, and it needed to, if it somehow boiled over, then let's go settle it on the storm, guys.
And that's another part about leadership on the team. If something needed to go under the storm, we didn't need a referee. We were the referees. If it got too rowdy, we would break it up. But we settled stuff under the storm. It was And it was a lot of fun, Rob.
Hey, see, even thinking about it brings you joy, don't it? All right,
yeah.
Hey, Stevie, man.
I'm about to put my big fingers in the dirt right now, man.
See, hey, you're gonna have a lot of fun this season. Hey, Stevie, thank you so much for the time, man. Really appreciate it.
No problem, man. Y'all, and I see the chat going crazy over here, man. Come and see me again next Monday. I would love to answer some questions.
Yes.
This is a lot of fun, man. I can't wait to see y'all next Monday.
Yep, that's what we'll do. We'll open up to questions next time. Thank you for that, Stevie. You're the man. Appreciate you. And thank you very much to Hargrove Roofing for sponsoring this segment. All right, Stevie Lee.
Hargrove Roofing, nose on your roof.
Hey!
Yeah, baby.
That man can deliver a tagline, can't he? Hook him, brother.
Hook him.
All right, Stevie.
That's my man, Stevie Lee. All right. Thank you to Hargrove Roofing for sponsoring the Winning Drive with offices all over Texas, Louisiana, of course, as well, and Arkansas. Hargrove is the choice of customers everywhere for superior, reliable service. If you're in need of a new roof, you'll want to know who's on your roof. It's Hargrove Roofing. Know who's on your roof. Thank you very much to Hargrove Roofing. Great segment for Stevie Lee. Yeah, next time, guys, we'll open it up to questions. We just want to introduce it as a segment. But every Monday, game reviews. We'll be talking line play with Stevie Lee. As you can tell, Stevie Lee's open anything. You can ask Stevie Lee anything. He's really cool about it. All right, so let's get back to, I want to play some of the audio that we missed out on, and we'll get back to some of your questions, guys. So keep the questions coming. I promise we'll hit as many of them as we can. But I want to get back to the Sark audio. He was asked about the wide receiver position, and I believe he started talking about Silas Bowden, if I'm not mistaken, there, CJ, originally. But then Sark started, he was asked about Silas Bowden, but then got into the versatility of not only Silas Bowden, but of the entire wide receiving core. Here's what, and I'm in Matthew, will have this ready for you. Thank you. This is what Steve Sarkisian had to say today when he was asked about Silas Bowden, they started talking about as a group, the wide receivers and their versatility overall.
I really think the one thing about our receiver core, Coach Jackson and I were visiting on this last night, after the players had left. The beauty of kind of the first, let's call it 6 guys, about 5 of those 6 could play outside or inside. They're not one-dimensional players. I would say Ryan Wingo's probably a little bit more outside, limited right now, just because of the lack of maybe college experience, and he's really good when he's out there. Doesn't mean he can't play inside, but the other 5, any one of them could go in there and play well and play at a high level, and any one of them can go outside and play at a high level. And so I think that's great for us because it gives us a lot of position flexibility. They can work well with one another, easy communication, and we haven't been as fortunate for that aspect over the last couple of years. And so it is a different space for us, but it's very comforting.
It's a great clip there. Thank you, Matthew. And really, Sark, really showing why the wide receiver position, the circle of trust, is so hard for guys to penetrate. You got to learn all the positions, and you have to know every last one of them because he wants to move guys around. I remember I given the stats several times. A.D. Mitchell last year ran 37 unique routes. I don't even know if there are 37 unique routes I could name on the route tree. And, Coach, I think this is something that ultimately, you let me know back in your day, coaching on 40 acres, and even when Jordan and Jackson were there. I think ultimately that is the goal, right? You want receivers to be able to know all of them, but it's just a really tough thing to master as a receiver to have the bandwidth to learn every position out there.
I can't think of a time since I've been keeping up with Texas football that we've had that luxury, When Jordan and Quan Cosby were playing, they had their roles. Actually, Quan played outside, Jordan played outside, and Jordan played slot.
Yeah.
But they just pretty much played what they played. And why use this, bring in all the versatility that we bring in if you're not going to utilize the versatility they bring in? And as you know, as a defensive back, that, if you know where guys, we've talked about this before, where guys going to line up every time, what his movie, what he does. Well, now you don't know who's going to be inside, who's going to be outside. You don't know what routes they're going to run. It's creates a huge advantage for the offense. And the more versatile we can be, obviously, the more we put the defense on their heels.
Yeah. 5 of the 6 receivers can play any position. And that goes to show, he said only Ryan Wingo, the freshman, is the one who's pretty much isolated to the outside because he doesn't know the rest of the positions yet. But I'll give credit to the older guys, the vets who've come in. Especially Silas Bowden, that means they've acclimated pretty quickly there, CJ, because Silas Bowden wasn't even here for the spring, but if he can already play all the positions, that means he's learned them pretty fast. Same thing for guys like Matthew Golden, but at least they had more time, and Isaiah Bond. So that I will say that's a good sign of the circle of trust expanding. I think you're going to be at 6 guys in the circle of trust for the wide receivers, at least to start the season.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it's interesting, right? Texas was so spoiled by Xavier Worthy. I think it kind of overshadowed what was a pretty thin wide receiver room. In 2022, 23, maybe you had 3 guys that you felt really good about, but what else after that, right? 2021, it was really just feed it immediately to Xavier Worthy. You didn't really see, I believe he had 130 targets almost his freshman campaign. You don't see that too often, especially when, at a school like Texas where you're expecting wide receiver to be a position of strength because you can go out and attract some big-time talented guys. But it's interesting to hear from Sarkisian we're at a position of depth right now where we feel really good. And it's the first time that we've seen it since we've arrived. And so that's encouraging, right? That circle of trust, however large it might be, it's going to be larger than we've seen in previous years just because, everybody's basically on the same footing, whether it's new to the system, new to the game of college football, or just trying to get trying to crack the lineup, basically. Everybody's on that same footing there, but also very talented, which I think is also encouraging because then to break tendencies and to have that kind of positionless approach, that versatility, very difficult for defenses to game plan for and scheme against whenever it comes to a given Saturday, and what Sarkisian might pull out of the hat as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. All right, before we get to your questions here, and we got another piece of audio about Quinn that I want to get to. Let's thank another one of our fantastic sponsors. Really excited to have South Point Dodge on for another football season. They've signed up to join us for this upcoming. Hopefully, it is a legendary college football season, one that we'll always remember. But Texas football fans, you can score an easy extra point this season when you get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge has over 600 vehicles in stock right now, including a great selection of Ram 1500s, 2500s, and 3500s. Whatever your truck needs, South Point Dodge is your one-stop shop. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything, and right now they have a great special. You can shop over 50 Ram 2500s, all marked down with huge savings right now at South Point Dodge. Go check out their amazing selection online today at southpointdodge.com, or you can go see them for yourself off of I-35 in South Austin, or you can go online once again at southpointdodge.com. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. South Point Dodge is Austin's automotive everything and your one-stop shop for all things automotive. Get to the point at South Point Dodge. Thank you very much, South Point Dodge, for sponsoring the winning drive, and also for being part of the On Texas football family. Really excited about that continuing partnership for this football season. All right, let's get to some of the questions here. Here is Eric. He says, Rod, what would indicate the coaches are better at marrying the front seven with the back end this year? That's a great question. I think Johnny Nanson's going to help with that a little bit. In terms of marrying the pressure packages in the front with your coverages. I just think a lot of times last season, and I think it was the leverage that upset me more at times. The guys would almost play certain coverages with leverage as if they anticipated having help where there was no help. Right? They'd be outside leverage. I'm like, well, if you're outside leverage like that, then I'm assuming you got some inside help of some kind. And yet there'd be times where they wouldn't have inside help and they give up easy completions, as we know, easy inside breaking routes. That's something that bothered me. And I remember Sark saying that the coverage dictated the leverage. That is not something they left up to the individual defenders. They did not have, I don't think, their own freedom to be able to, or the leeway to be able to determine what kind of leverage they should play. Maybe they should be allowed to do that based on the situation, because sometimes based on a motion or a shift, I think it should potentially change your leverage as a defensive back, depending on if you have help and where that help is. So that was my big complaint in terms of marrying the fronts with the coverages. Sometimes I think the leverage was off in the coverages. But ultimately, I think some of it is for the players, it's just them being great chess masters on their own. You have to think through the game, right? Down, distance, alignment, assignment. If there's a blitz, you have to understand where the blitz is coming from, and where the blitz is designed to, where the pressure is designed to come from, and where the quarterback wants to get rid of the football. And what are the hot reads and the hot routes potentially? You have to anticipate that. I think often it's the players who sometimes can be disconnected from what's happening in the front. And I think for young DBs that happens where they don't pay any attention to what's happening. Like all they want to hear is the coverage. It's like no. You need to know what's happening in the front. It's going to determine a lot about how easy your job is, all right, and how tough your job is as a defensive back. If it's a pressure, if it's a blitz, all right, blitz, ball's supposed to come out quickly, and depending on the down and distance, depending on where the chains are, you may want to sit on some routes because the team may be trying to get to the sticks. If it's a three-man pressure, but just three guys, quarterback may have a little time. If it's a long developing route, you want to make sure you stay on that upfield shoulder because the quarterback may have a little bit more time to push it deep. Like these are little things. So I think it's not only that the coverage itself sometimes is disconnected from the front, and that could be on the coaches, but I think oftentimes the players themselves, the leverage, the technique, and also the players themselves disconnected. Like, hey, what should you expect if the front is doing this with your coverage? And that's where you get into being a student of the game and being a chess master. And now you got older players who I think will consider that. And Coach, am I off about that in your opinion?
No,
you don't have to know exactly what's going on, but you should know if it's a blitz, if it's a three-man pressure, if it's four guys. When I had Casey Hampton and Sean Rogers, I knew I didn't need a blitz. As long as Casey Hampton and Sean Rogers was rushing, you only got 2.5 seconds. That's it. And after that, Rob B can start turning around looking for the football. So you just got to know who's up. Trey Moore may change that for you. You may have a different clock with Trey Moore up there. You know what I'm saying? You should know if Trey Moore's in there, you should know, okay, Trey's in there. All right. I know this is going to be, if they run a game or something with Trey, he has a better chance of getting home. These are things that little tidbits you need to know.
Well, one of the things that you and CJ have brought up many times, and I agree with it, and not give you guys credit for it, but really when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. The best thing we can do for our secondary is have great edge rushers. Mm-hmm. Putting pressure on the quarterback. If he has time to sit back there all day, any DB, you can't cover a guy up for that long, or bad things are going to happen. So the better we are up front, the easier that marriage, as Eric calls it, is going to be.
Yeah, he's right about that. David Keith Williams actually has a good one, and this is for you, Coach. You might have just answered it. Add Coach Shipley. Love the questions, David Keith. Keep them coming. David Keith Williams, you've been critical of the secondary, which is warranted. I have also been critical of the secondary. I think we all have. Do you think generating a more consistent pass rush that can actually sack quarterbacks will be a significant help to the secondary? I believe Coach just kind of threw it out there. Yeah, listen, I was a sophomore cornerback, and I got to tell you, if I didn't have Casey Hampton and Shaun Rogers, that's a good chance I might not have had the job my junior year. I mean, I might have gotten toasted so much I wouldn't have it, but I was smart enough to realize, I don't have to cover very long with those dudes. And I remember when it clicked for me early on as a starter going, okay, Big Shaun Rogers and Casey Hampton, I can sit on some of these routes. That quarterback going to be getting rid of the football because they're going to be in his damn face. Now, I learned, I was watching film with the defense coach, and I realized, like, damn, they are really in this quarterback's grill. They do that every game. Why the hell am I backpedaling? Now we're gonna come play some bump and run, make their life real, make throw off the timing a lot, and that's what Bull Reese did. That's basically how we came up with kind of the new design for the defense. And then once those guys left, it had to be a Corey Redding, and it had to be other guys that apply that pressure. But I remember that, and I think the guys, if they start being more students of the game, I think they'll figure it out. But there's no doubt, Sark is big. Sark has said openly that the pressure is better. Like, he is openly been very complimentary of the pressure they've had already in camp. He even remarked that, CJ, do you remember this? And I'm paraphrasing, that they asked him about Quinn. We'll play this cut actually about Quinn stepping up in the pocket. And he actually anecdotally said, actually, we haven't been able to step up in the pocket consistently because of the pressure. All right. They've been applying some good pressure with him. Right.
I was surprised he said that today, Rod. He said, sometimes we don't have a pocket. I'm sitting there saying, hold on. Texas had a pretty good offensive line a year ago, and most of those guys are all back. You mean to tell me that they actually are getting pressure on Quinn in practice? Okay. That's great to hear about the defense. And I don't want to, worry at all about the offensive line, because I think we've seen them in games for a full 14-game season a year ago, and we're pretty pleased with what we saw on the field. So, okay, that's a win for the defense in my eyes. I like what I'm hearing right now from Steve Sarkisian about the edges. For him to say, quote, I'm happy with the edge room. All right, yeah, I'm in. Sign me up. I'm buying the Kool-Aid. I
agree. He's been bragging about them edges all spring and all offseason pretty much. So if the edges aren't a huge, if there's not a huge improvement exponentially in terms of splash plays from the edges, I think Sark will have to answer for that with the media, because he's gotten us hyped up about the edges. And Sark does not necessarily, he's not one to brag or boast about his teams. So when he is doing, I don't think he is bragging. I think he's just kind of stating what he's seeing. Like, no, guys been really good so far. So hopefully that continues. All right. Matter of fact, speaking of Quinn, before we get back to the questions, let's hit a quote about Quinn. Now, this is not about Quinn and the pressure and him stepping up in the pocket. It's actually about where Quinn has improved the most this offseason. And Quinn and Sark said, actually, it's Quinn's leadership is where he's taken the biggest leap of improvement.
Leadership, for sure. He definitely, this team looks to him and how he goes. And that takes on a different responsibility from that perspective, in that he doesn't get to have that day, even when maybe he's not feeling his best or maybe he's a little fatigued. He's still got to be the guy that drives the temperature of that offense and fuels that offense. And so that's a little bit new for him to some degree. There isn't a Jay Witt, right? There isn't a JT Sanders, or there isn't a Bijan or a Roshan from 2 years ago that were those kind of catalysts. Now that's him. And I think he's assumed that responsibility, but yet it's still a challenge. It's anytime, again, we had to get him out of his comfort zone to go into a new space, and he was more than willing to do that. And I think it's showing. But like anything, there's moments where we have to remind him, oh, this is that time. This is what you're talking about. And to me, that's been the glaring biggest difference.
Yeah, and I know exactly what he's talking about. He's talking about bringing the juice and the energy, Coach. I remember Kwame Cavill had a great saying to me, and he was like, never underestimate the power of false enthusiasm. And he would go out there, and Kwame would he'd be out there just putting on a show. And then when he told me that one day, I was like, he doesn't know he really means it. It's almost like that George Costanza line. It's not a lie if you believe it. He would almost psych himself into it. Trust me, 13th, 14th day of 2 days, hey, false enthusiasm can take you far. You got to fake it till you make it. And I think that's kind of what he's saying for the quarterback. It's not, and some guys are like that naturally, and you want those guys on the offense. He's saying, hey, you had some guys that were naturally like that. JT Sanders last year, Jay Witts like that. They come in, Coach, enthusiasm, energy, they're hyped. They got the positivity working. Not every player is openly and vocally like that. Some guys trust me, I played with some guys. It's like, man, can't get them guys to shut up. Kwame Cavill was one of them. Hodges Mitchell was kind of like that. Some guys just like they bring the energy in the huddle, so they get everybody hyped. It's beautiful if your quarterback's like that. Now, VY was like that. So when you get a quarterback who's great, elite, and they also have that je ne sais quoi about them where they get everybody hyped and they have so much energy, it's contagious, it's great. But not every quarterback's going to be like that. You do need those guys on your offense. And what he's saying is, Quinn, when you notice that nobody is filling that role, I need you to be about the false enthusiasm, right? And bring that energy and bring that vibe when you notice it's not, and you notice when it's not there, Coach. When you're in the huddle, you know what's lacking. It's easy, like, oh man, this ain't what we need. We need some more energy. We need a better vibe here. I think he's basically telling him to be the vibe meter. You need it. I need you to bring it. Am I off here?
No, you're exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think that's what we always call it. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But guys like that are huge. And when your quarterback is that way, then it makes who does everybody look up to on the offense? It hasn't always been the quarterback. It needs to be the quarterback who's setting the tempo every day in practice, setting the tempo every game. We're not going to play at the level that we feel. We're going to play at the level of our potential.
Yep. I felt that though, CJ. I felt that.
Yeah, I think Sam had a little bit of that in him, at least towards the back end of his career. Colt, as a fourth-year starter, probably as a third-year starter, probably had some of that in him. Y'all know better than I would. But it kind of in that, kind of those darker days, because there was so much turnover, that leadership from the quarterback spot may have gone to the wayside a little bit, just because of how much of a revolving door it was, right? Injuries played a large part in that. You obviously had some head coaching turnover in there as well. So you didn't have that face of the franchise, if you will, like we're seeing now with Quinn, and what should be a pretty, easy handoff of succession to Arch Manning next year as well. So that bodes well for the future in my eyes, and for the current day to know that Quinn has, again, kind of gone from being uplifted by the pieces around him to being the guy that holds the puppet strings and is bringing up everybody around him. That's encouraging, again, for what we're all expecting to be a pretty fun season of football down here in Austin.
Hey, and the NFL scouts want to see it. They're like, guy, we're going to draft you to be the face of our franchise. I'm going to need you to be a leader of men. That's just part of it. That's why they're going to pay you $50-something million on your second contract if you're a franchise quarterback, Quinn, because they want you to be a leader of men. And you ain't got to be that good. You ain't got to be elite these days. You just got to be a franchise quarterback and a good leader like a Tua or a Trevor Lawrence, and boom, you could be a $50-something million a year quarterback. Let me get to this, though, before we get back. UT boy. UT boy, appreciate that. Yeah, we are all proud of Coach, man. That is our coach. I would say this. Sark does – he does the university – proud when he's out there representing. He did an SEC media days, did a really good job. And I'll admit, and I've said this before, I actually watch every Sark media availability, and I do it anxiously because I know he's going to give you something. I love Mac Brown, God bless him, but there'd be some media availabilities where Mac Brown would give you nothing, and he'd be happy about it. He'd filibuster half the damn thing, and then kind of just BS his way around the question. You'd be like, I was here for 30 minutes. I got no information at all. I didn't even know. And then Charlie just didn't really like media availability. So Charlie wasn't comfortable with him. So you got nothing really from Charlie. And then Tom Herman, God bless him. I love Tom Herman. But there's times he thought he was smarter than everybody in the room. So he didn't get much from him because he's like, I'm not explaining this stuff to you guys. And then you just, so Sark is he's a perfect compromise of all those. He's very forthcoming, doesn't give you too much. It's entertaining. He likes he's having fun at times. It's not totally miserable doing it. So I'll admit, that's what I'll give Sark. I've not had a coach I've covered, and that includes Mac, because Mac just knew how to dominate a press conference where I felt more informed after. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I did a quick show this afternoon with SEC Unfiltered. My guy Chris Phillips, I met him up at SEC Media Days, and we talked about the offense, the defense, the special teams, and he asked me kind of point blank. He goes, "So Texas had a good season last year." I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Sarkisian, without question, folks in Austin like him." I said, "Yeah, I would say so." And it's not just because of the X's and the O's, but again, to your point there, Rod, there's a genuineness whenever he speaks with media and speaks with reporters or does like the one-on-ones that you can sense, he there's humility there. He relates, and there's a bit of genuineness. I think that exudes whenever he speaks to a crowd or to whoever, right? That SEC Media Days is the best example. He came out and basically was a salesman about his program for 12 minutes. And I came away saying, yeah, that was the best we heard. Kirby Smart, very much the same. And we talked about it. Those two guys, what do they do so well? Well, they're very good at coaching football, but they recruit and they connect. And that's the big part of relationships, to attract those big 4- and 5-star talented guys to your program to then make your life a whole lot easier on Saturdays. It's twofold there, but that's always been one of my big takeaways with Sarkisian is, I don't feel like he's ever, willingly lying to me, if that makes sense. Where
hey, that means he's doing the job. Willingly lying to me. He's like, he's not doing it he's not willingly do it. He may do it, but he's not
Only if you believe it.
Yeah. That's right, Coach. There you go.
I could tell you real quickly that the short time that I worked with Sark, he's the same guy every day. And he's the same guy with everybody in the building every day. When I see him being interviewed in a press conference, it's the same as him talking to a GA or a parent or I'm a secretary or a custodian or whatever. He's the same. He's consistently the same. He's very comfortable in who he is as a person and what he does. And I think that shows.
That's the former quarterback in him, just having that even keel kind of approach to, don't get too high, don't get too low.
No, it's a good point. Like I said, I really enjoy Sark, and I think that the authenticity thing is right there. And great point there about the coaches. Everybody gets that, and that's why everybody's a big fan of Sark these days. Okay, getting back to before we get to the questions, and we'll hit these real rapid fire before we get out of here, because now we get close to the end of it. One other story from practice I want to bring up, CJ and Coach. I want to get your thoughts. So we remember from the first 2 or 3 practices, Jahdae Barron Jalen Gilbo was getting first team reps at nickel, not Jahdae Barron. And then there was also reports that Michael Taft and Derek Williams were getting starting reps at safety, and Makuba was not with the ones just yet. And today, one of the stories, CJ, was that Jelani McDonald got some reps with the ones as well, and that Jalen Gilbo still getting some reps. There are some people who may think that this is, does this mean that Jalen Gilbo is making a move, or Jelani McDonald's making a move to take a starting spot away from a guy who's a projected starter? I don't think so. I think what's going on, and I could be way off here, Coach. I want to get your thoughts too, both you and CJ. I think what they are doing, and I'm not going to say that great minds think alike, but my idea was quit the wholesale rotations and start mixing and matching lineups with different skill sets of guys. I think more maybe that's what's going on. They know what they have in Makuba and Jahdae Barron. You got 2 guys that can play any position in the secondary pretty much. And this is about trying to get your best 11 on the field and try to figure out, in terms of rotations, who are the best groups to mix and match different lineups, rather than this is our starting group. Now let's rotate them out, put them on the bench, and put in a second group. And that's when the offense will have more success, which I saw at times last year. I think now they're thinking more of the basketball approach, where let's see if we can mix and match our lineups. And since we have a lot of versatility, with two of our best guys, Jadae Barron and Makuba, now we can really be flexible and be malleable in terms of be creative about how we want to approach these lineup changes and these lineup mix and match and alterations. I think that's what's going on, but I could be off. What are your thoughts?
I think that they're just trying to do exactly what they're trying to figure out the pieces of the puzzle.
Yep.
One. Two, another thing you do is, they may already have a good idea maybe of who's going to wind up where, but you have to let it play out. You can't say, Coach, how come I never got a shot? No, you can't say that. Everybody's going to get a shot that deserves it. And so I think they need to see all those guys going against the first offense. And same thing with the receivers. They're doing the same thing with the receivers. There'll be days that Silas Bolden may not be starting, and somebody else is. It's not a knock on him. They're just trying to figure out what they have and what they're capable of doing in different situations. And then, as Stevie was saying, the cream will rise to the top. The guys who need to be in those positions, they'll already have looked at everybody in every position that they think that they could possibly want to look at. And then as you start getting closer to that first game, you start settling in with some guys. Not that you're still not going to rotate some guys, but just finding the best fit. That's what I think they're doing. They're just doing what everybody does this time of year. You're just trying to figure out what you got.
Yeah. Which pieces go where, Rod? I like that basketball analogy in the sense that, you watch the Mavs or you watch the Warriors, right? If Steph Curry's off the floor, well, you're going to need Klay Thompson and Draymond Green to be on to make sure that offense runs. Yeah. Same way with the Mavs. You know who your, clutch time guys are going to be, but that comes in the fourth quarter. How do you get to that point in the sense that you're still in the ball game? And that's each possession, finding the right pieces that play well together with one another. Again, to me, I think we have an understanding of who those back end guys will be. And I do like this question from Rick. And Rod, I'll kick it to you. I mean, if Texas does go to a one high look or, they kind of spin down and play a cover three, who mans the middle of the field? Luckily, question. I think Texas has three guys right now that you'd feel really comfortable kind of having that spot, right? Derek Williams a year ago is probably your most consistent piece in the backfield. Andrew Makuba the last 2 years at Clemson was that middle of the defense, deep middle thirds guy for the Clemson Tigers back there. And then Michael Taft. I think he's not a guy that's going to disappear and just drop out of this conversation, right? He's I know the election's around the corner, but he's kind of like that independent third-party guy that just won't drop out. He's not going to go anywhere because he's got that case. And his case a year ago was he's going to do the dirty work, and he came away with the interception in 3 straight games, something that no other defensive back on the team was able to do. So he finds ways to earn his reps, and that leadership is something that, again, is very underrated when it comes to Michael Taft. So those 3 guys could all kind of mix and match. Now, who spins down? Who's kind of that fire safety down by the line of scrimmage whenever that's the case? Again, Makuba had a year at Clemson, his freshman campaign, where he was that nickel guy. Can Taft do it? Derek Williams? Who knows just yet? But that's why they're doing this, to throw out a new starting 11 and then work and mix and match when it comes to a new situation in team periods to get those guys a little bit more run and looks when it comes to coverages, motions, looks, whatever. It's all working out the kinks right now.
No, I agree with CJ about. I like your guys that you threw out there as supposed safeties. I think you do have 3 guys to do it. Right now, I'd put maybe Makuba as my top guy because he's done it so much. But Derek Williams, physically, I mean, that guy can play sideline to sideline if you need him to. Good stuff there. All right, rapid fire here before we get done. Doug Haywood says, heck, you might have to do co-starters for wide receiver, defensive end, and tight end potentially. Maybe so. I mean, that's a good problem to have. You got co-starters all over the place at all different positions.
Rod, Coach, about co-starters, would that ever backfire in the sense of I know what my job, my role is here. I know I need to get out there, set the tone. versus I don't know if I'm going to be in the lineup that I look at it in the sense of baseball a little bit. I don't know if I'm going to be in the lineup today. I better go out in my 3 at-bats. I better get on base. I might start pushing a little bit more. If I'm in, that rotation at cornerback, do I jump that route to get a ball on the ground and give up a big play as a result? Do y'all see that as maybe a concern there? Or is it, hey, we're just, it doesn't mean a whole lot. I'll get my snaps. I'll make my impact. It'll all be, cherry fine. I wanted to get y'all's thoughts there a little bit.
That's a great question. I don't know if it could be a negative recruiting point against them. Maybe that could be it. Because I remember in my day, we did not have the code, but maybe we just weren't that deep. But as a player, I wanted my reps. I mean, I didn't want to share reps. I was a selfish player in that regard. I believe I gave my team the best chance to win, and I didn't want to share my reps with anybody. So I'll admit it probably would have been a problem for me.
I'll tell you, I love those guys. I love those guys, and Jay Witt, I think, is the first one that comes to mind. They don't care. They don't care. Listen, I'm not listening. I don't care, man. I'm just, when I get my chance, I'm going to go out there and do it. I think that's a very valid point, CJ, what you're saying. I think, but I also think that that's real life. I mean, you get put in a situation. Oh, I've got to make a play. Well, the same thing happens in the game. Somebody gets hurt or needs a breather. You go in. I mean, that's just life. I mean, that just happens as a football player. You're going to have your back up against a wall, but competition is good. I don't see Sark and his staff as being politically motivated. In other words, we want everybody to feel good. I don't think they do that. And I don't look for many guys to be named co-starters. I think that might change from time to time, but for the most part, you put on your big boy pants and you go out there and you compete, and you may not be the starter this week, but that doesn't mean you're not going to play. You may be, we'll just see how the season goes. But, you love to have a team of guys who don't care. They don't care if I'm not called out in the starting lineup. And that's tough to find because it's really, really difficult. You recruit these guys, some of them for 3 years, and you tell them it's all about you. It's all about you. This is how we're going to use. It's all about you. And then as soon as you get them, you got to deprogram them and say, you know what? It ain't about you. It's about the team. Well, wait a minute, coach. But that's the truth. That's just true. You got to quit talking about me, because now we got you. Now we're going to start talking about we, and you've got to change their mindset. And you hope that the people that have gone on before them, like Jay Witt and those guys, and the ones that are still on the team and the ones to come, will continue that unselfish atmosphere on the team, that I'll do whatever it takes to help Texas win.
No, good stuff there. James Henson says, hey, y'all, have any of you seen special teams, current Auburn, in coverage? We saw a little bit of punt return. I think one of the earlier media windows, and that's when we learned that Silas Bowden was probably going to be your number one punt returner. Took him like a day to go from like third or fourth to being the guy first catching the punts. But I haven't heard much about it. Sark was asked about randomly the NFL kickoff rule. He did say that, and you should ask him, CJ, next time you're at the media availability. He said he went to OTAs and nobody asked him a follow-up. He said, I went to OTAs and I saw the NFL kickoff practice there, but I didn't see it in the Hall of Fame game, basically what he said. And I was like, oh, somebody ask him what OTAs he went to. Somebody ask him. Nobody asked him. So when you're there, say, Coach, you mentioned you went to some OTAs. Will you be willing to share what OTAs you went to? Because
that went over my head, Rod, because he's done that, right? What was it? Mike McDaniel spent some time around campus during the pro day for 2 days. He was the speaker at the convention. We know Shanahan and Sark are close. Mm-hmm. They got that connection. Anytime, and you've talked about this a number of times, Rod, is Sarkisian will see a play, he'll see a formation or a scheme and say, that's coming back to Austin with me, right? That's coming in the playbook and it's coming back with me. I wonder, where he was. That's It's a good question.
Got to ask that. I'm telling you. All right, let's thank our sponsor before we get out of here. Flat Creek Estate Wine. We appreciate Flat Creek Estate. They've done a great job as our one of our sponsors, and we are proud to be a partner with Flat Creek Estate. Did you know the most awarded wine in Texas is actually the vineyard closest to Austin? That's right. Flat Creek Estate Winery, just minutes from downtown Austin, and they've won award after award this year for their vintage wine, Super Texan. Super Texan is now available at your local specs, so give it a try. Of course, Flat Creek is also a gorgeous venue with barbecues and wine tastings every single weekend. It's perfect for a day date with your significant other or a weekend getaway. Go check it out for yourself. FlatCreekEstate.com. Flat Creek Estate Winery, also available at Central Market. My wife found it there. It is actually her favorite wine now, so she keeps up with Flat Creek Estate Winery. Go check it out for yourself. It's a great wine, but also a great venue. Thank you to Flat Creek Estate for sponsoring the winning drive. All right, we got a super chat before we get out of here. UT boy, what's up? UT boy wants to know who is in the circle, Roderick. I think you got right now. It's got 6 in your circle of trust. You got Jonte Cook. Yep. You got DeAndre Moore's in that circle of trust. You got Matthew Golden. You got Bolden. You got Bond. You got Wingo. That's a 6-man circle of trust. Circle of trust ain't never been that wide for Sark, so we'll see how he handles it. But I think I'm pretty confident saying that's your circle of trust. All right, thank you guys for all
Rod,
of
one
the.
thing. I got one thing. Our Jerry Hamilton just put this up on OnTexasFootball.com.
Okay.
He stopped by Galveston Ball earlier today, talked with Jonah Williams a little bit. A little interesting news here. Obviously, 2-sports star, 5-star on the football field. He's going to graduate in December. So he will be looking to play college football and baseball at the next level. I know that there was some concern about whether or not he would be a candidate to go in the MLB draft pretty early and forgo playing college athletics. Graduating in December tells me he will not be playing his senior season of baseball. He's going to be pursuing football and baseball at the next level. So interesting note there from Jerry Hamilton, who did a great job heading out to Galveston Ball today. Of course, Jonah's expected to make his decision in a couple weeks here in August.
Yeah, I like that. That's some nice news. Nice nugget there. Thank you, CJ, for that. Before we get out, go ahead,
I want to clear up one thing. You and Stevie were talking about the storm. Tell people what our listeners don't have any idea what the storm is.
Oh, okay. Well, in the locker room, and is it still there, Coach?
No,
it's not that they got rid of it. In the locker room, there used to be this painting in the ceiling of the locker room, and essentially it was like Bevo, and he was like coming out of a storm. He was like, he was like running out of a storm, and it had like the storm in the background, and then Bevo there, and we called it the storm. And then when there was a disagreement of any kind, and guys, obviously on the football team, every now and then, guys, there's a disagreement, and it escalated to the point where there was going to be physical violence between the two, right? They wanted to fight. They knew they couldn't fight because we teammates. We had to handle it under the storm. So there was no punching. You could wrestle under the storm, no punching at all. And if it got too crazy, guys ended up, risking injury. We had big linemen to break it up, so we were all good. And usually that was like a guy like Rod B, little tiny dude, hyping up the crowd.
Yeah, it was kind of a dome. It was kind of a circular dome.
Yep. And it was in the
It was
middle
really
of the locker room.
cool. They had it lit up. It was really, really cool.
And we'd move all the chairs out of the way, and then we basically, are you ready to rumble? And then we do it without the coaches around, because the coaches, no way that they would approve of this. So we kind of wait till there was no coach around. We had guys at the doors watching out to see if coaches are coming through, and we would let them wrestle it out.
I like
it was
that.
great. These days, if somebody would have a video or something, it got out. But we kept it. I mean, I want to say up until national title, VY was still putting people in the storm. I mean, I think that thing. I want to say the best years of Texas football, the storm was a thing. All right, it was a thing because Steve was right. We had so much hostility at practice. We were getting after each other. Every now and then, you would have some stuff that would bleed over from the practice field. And we were like, all right, y'all still it in the storm. Let's go. And we had to have a way to sell it. So there you go. That's the gist of it. All right. Say sorry if y'all didn't know. I apologize for just bringing that up and not explaining it. That's my fault. All right. Thank you, Coach, for all your wisdom. Thank you, CJ, for everything. Thank you to Stevie Lee, because he was awesome. That'll be every Monday. He'll be joining us. Remember, the new time is around 3:15 to around 4:30. That's when we're in the show. Sorry I couldn't get to all the questions. Hey, Nate, good luck to you. Nate says, Coach, I've got my oldest. 8 under tackle, trying out for wide receiver tonight. We've been practicing those diving catches into the sofa and the pool.
Heck yeah, baby.
Get some of that Shipley mojo. You need that.
Hey,
You'll be doing good.
go follow Jackson Shipley on Instagram or Facebook, and he'll show you all kinds of drills he's doing with his little boys. In fact, they just did a commercial ad for somebody that's pretty cool.
There you go. See, there you go. The Shipleys, man, that's a wide receiver factory right there. So thank you for all the questions. Thank you guys for all the participation. Thank you very much for the super chats. Thank you, UT Boy, for super chats. Appreciate all that. Thank you to Hargrove Roofing. Thank you to South Point Dodge. Thank you to Flat Creek State Riding. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes. He's a real MVP, ladies and gentlemen. Trust me, this thing would suck without Matthew. Thanks to CJ. Thanks to Coach. Until next time, folks, hook 'em horns.